What is sound design? Without question, my favorite aspect of the audio industry. Okay, cop-out answer, but what is being a sound designer? Sound designers are liars. They lie to you every day, in almost every piece of media you consume. For most, it may not come as a surprise if you've ever given it thought, but until you have the realization, it may not be something you ever consider. What you see isn't what you hear. Shocking, right? I mean, who would have guessed you're not actually hearing a 28-foot robot from a galaxy far, far away? Of course, they didn't fly in a xenomorph for shooting on Alien. They couldn't. They're terrified of airline food.
Oh, brother, this guy...
Jokes aside, our jobs as sound designers are to convince you that what you're hearing is what you see, which means we often lie to the viewer's ears. Sound design isn't as straightforward as you may think, and oftentimes deception is nothing more than a little persuasion. However, at the end of the day, lying as a sound designer is okay. So, I made all this stink about how we lie to you. Here's the breakdown. What you see isn't what you hear. It's an obvious thing, but not something you realize until you actually think about it. I mean, come on, have you ever seen a Transformer? You think Sam Worthington had to dress his wounds after the fight scenes in Avatar? Do you think Arnold Schwarzenegger can tell you how loud Predator was? Obviously not, because Transformers, Avatar, and Arnold Schwarzenegger aren't real. They're fictitious creations of movie magic and art. As a matter of fact, around 90% of the things you hear in a film or TV show aren't on-set audio. It's all been re-recorded in post. That said, we have to make sounds to fit these on-screen creations of wonder. Sound designers have the job of persuading you that what you hear is what you see. And there are limits to this, especially when the topic of realism is involved. Sometimes, the most realistic sound style isn't the best fit for a movie. Let me give you some examples of what a film sounds like when the audio doesn't follow good cinematic practice. Then, I'll break it down. Here's an important dialogue scene in Transformers with accurate footsteps.
No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the trash cans and I'm gonna scrape the grill and I'm gonna sweep up the whole house right now. Right now.
Here's Liam Neeson in Non-Stop after a hole gets blown in the plane's fuselage with much more accurate sound.
Come on, Kyle, you can do this. You can do this. Come on.
Severe damage to your fuselage. Are you able to maintain control?
Horrible, right? I mean, it's not just about realism, there's a greater purpose behind audio and film. That can be explained as the philosophy of sound design. You see, as a sound designer, your job will often involve you making a creative decision to fit sound effects to not be as realistic as possible, but to instead serve the purpose of the film and its story. Usually, as sound designers, this means cutting back from realism for the sake of viewing pleasure. As sound designers, we have to follow a golden rule. The audio we create exists to reinforce the visuals. Notice that wording, sound doesn't need to match. It doesn't need to be exactly like what's going on in a scene, it just needs to reinforce the story. Audio is just as much a storytelling device as the picture you see, and ultimately, depending on the scene, certain sounds may end up being emphasized or exaggerated or have quirks about them to serve a purpose. This is where we break away from just film and TV and see how video games take such great advantage of these principles of sound. How does this work, you may ask? Well, let me show you. Here are some practical examples. This is an assault rifle in Apex Legends, the R301. So one cool addition about this gun and its sound design is how the gun makes different shooting noises as your ammo runs low in a magazine. It's a small detail, but it works wonders on your ears. This is Valve's acclaimed title, Portal 2. In this puzzler, you're given a device that can create portals on walls that you use to traverse the map, deal with hazards, etc., as well as incorporating a gravity gun object picker-upper thing. The cool part of the sound design is how this device makes different sounds depending on whether or not you're successful in opening a portal or picking up an item and other stuff. The cool thing about video game sound design is how subconscious it all ends up being. They say no news is good news, and the same is similar when talking about audio. Not being able to notice that something's there typically means that the sound designers did a really good job. There is one part of sound design we haven't covered, and it's probably one of the most important: music. When working with music, you're designing all along the creative process. You apply these principles in recording instruments a certain way to achieve a certain design goal. For example, recording a piano with a duller microphone for a darker sound. Lastly, sound selection throughout the entirety of the process is huge, and though it's seen as a more creative suggestion, there's basis in logic, and here are some awesome examples to show this. What genre of music reminds you of hell, Satan, and demons? Well, thrash metal, of course. The way Doom's music was designed was to embody the ambience of hell when a player was out of combat. However, the soundtrack dynamically picks up to intense, quick tempo, and brutal, loud metal segments when engaged in Doom's quality, intense, quick, and brutal combat system. Mick Gordon, the mind behind this album, even went as far as creating a new type of choir. One where every vocalist is trained in the arts of metal screaming. The ending result was equally horrifying as it was magnificent.
We want the whole game to feel like a heavy metal album experience. Every time I get a drop, I hit play and I'm like, oh, this is freaking amazing.
Boneworks. Boneworks is a game where the player is dropped into a past generation view of the metaverse. In this VR title, the programming goes haywire, and the AI inhabitants of this world go rogue. Boneworks' soundtrack, titled Bone Tones, captures two concepts exceptionally well. One is the nostalgic feeling of being in a world unknown but understandable to the player. Two, the feeling of imminent confusion, danger, and emotions associated with those feelings. The producer and artist behind this album, Michael Wyckoff, made great usage of retro synthesizers, lush leads caked in 80s style fake reel reverb, composition around ambience, and dirty mixing, plenty of analog noise to be found in between.